Yo! Hello, YouTube. How's it going? Welcome to the Malice Experience. I am, of course, Mr. Malice. This dude over here, well, y'all know him. It's Mystic Salon. If you need a haircut, give him a call.
Everybody needs two phones, right? One on each side.
Exactly, right? You know, because why not?
Why not?
Exactly. Well, welcome to, what is this? What is it? The 15th? We're 15 days into 2022, and we're finally going to actually start talking about what it is that we're going to be doing for 2022 to be better people, to be better magicians, to be better occultists, and, well, just to be. So, welcome, everybody. And last week, the deck arrived, and I'm already... Ooh, okay, cool. Start working with various Goetia spirits. There you go. Rock on. Goetia-mon. Gotta collect them all.
Love it.
Right? If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Sorry. It's a community inside joke. So, hope you guys are excited for today. I'm excited for today. I'm excited to kind of actually get into this and actually start kind of talking about some of the stuff that I've kind of like dug up on what it is that we're going to be doing, kind of complete our path, so to speak, kind of reach that next level this year, at least for me. Hopefully you guys be able to take something from this and also kind of up your game a little bit. But before we get into all that, as always, we are going to be doing the weekly reading and talking about a very special tarot deck. A very special tarot deck because it's connected to a very special lady that has passed, left us. Is her name Betty White? Yeah, it's Betty White. Yeah, Betty White. So, Mystic, take it away. Golden Girls Tarot deck.
Yes, that is right. The Golden Girls Tarot. We're going to look into your future from the lanai. That's actually written on the box. I didn't come up with it, even though it's kind of funny.
Right.
So what better? Like I'm totally not feeling the tarot vibe tonight after everything that's been running around, and then we got to talking. Malice mentioned Betty White, right? And we're thinking, I actually have the Golden Girls Tarot deck, and now I feel like doing some tarot. So we're gonna have a little bit more fun with this one, though. I am still gonna do a tarot review because that's what I do. Comes in this ugly ass pink box. It looks like flamingos shit all over it. But it is what it is. It is a full 78 card tarot deck with a full major and minor arcana. It is interestingly designed. It has borders, so I hate that. I think everybody knows that. But it actually is a pretty solid deck. I mean, the cards are pretty cool. It's reversible backs. I don't get what that has anything to do with anything, though, except for the little bit of palm trees on there. But yeah, so there's some really interesting things in here, and I think they actually tried to put a little bit of thought into these cards, which I'm a little shocked about. Not that anybody would have any trouble figuring out who the fool is, and it's not really, like I said, I've never seen. Does anybody ever wear? Like, did anybody ever actually wear a full leopard? Well, Blanche probably did actually at some point. I found a couple of these pretty interesting. I don't know that I would go with Sophia for the Hierophant, but I can see it. Like, if you think about it, like, I really could see it. And I mean, it's got some really interesting designs in it. And I'm telling you, I'm going to need the universe today more than I've needed them in the past. Because, trying to get to, oh, of course, the Arthur is going to be death. Not a bad looking card. I'm just saying that one's not too bad.
Overall, that's not that bad.
No, the devil.
Of
I mean,
course.
some of the artwork on these is actually like it's pretty neat. It's a little bit graphic-y, graphic artisty, a little bit watercolor-ish. pretty neat. The tower is one of my favorite ones. If anybody doesn't know where Shady Pines is, then we are not friends. Not that we had to be friends in the first place, but go away from me right now because you have to know the Golden Girls. Um, Shady Pines. Let's see. Um, the cards basically, the way that they did their suits and the minor arcana, your wands are Sophia, your pentacles are Blanche, your cups are Rose Nyland from Third Nervous Gloof, and the swords are B. Arthur. And if you think about it, that's actually not a bad grouping. Like, um, it's quite interesting. And I will apologize now, Malice, if you lose, the channel loses viewers because all the comments about the great content and discussions, and we're starting off with the Golden Girls Tarot. So
All right.
we're having a little bit of fun for the new year, y'all. That's it. Because yeah. Let's see what the Lanai shares with us. And obviously, I think everybody kind of, well, not everybody, I guess I shouldn't assume, uh, would know that even though of all the things that people have become and done in their life and all the people that are, people to look up to, you don't really think of the Golden Girls as people to look up to. But if you ever
Right.
did or are interested in watching any of their shows, they dealt with some of the most difficult social and political things that people wouldn't have even touched. Um, uh, Gay, race, God, I can't. There's just so many. Doing the right thing, morality, having fun, living your life, and all of those things. So um, a lot of really good lessons in there, and I have seen every single episode, and I can probably tell you which ones are which at any given time as well.
Really?
Mm-hmm. You know. Everything I needed to know about life, I learned from the Golden Girls and the facts of life. I'm an 80s and 90s nerd. All right, so let's see what the Lanai has to share today. Judgment. What a great card to start the new year off with. Ace of Swords, like it, and the Tower. Yeah. The Tower came up in the last reading we did on Street, I believe. So I kind of want to be like, somebody else tell me what this means. You know? When you're talking about going into a new year, and our topic tonight is probably going to, derail like every train that's ever derailed in its life off into the abyss of nothingness, because that's how we do. Um, but the topic as it stands now, right, is 2022, new year. We're manifesting. We have New Year's resolutions. We have all these things we want to do individually and collectively. And at some point, you have to change that desire or that thought into some action. And a lot of people are, I have heard a lot of people, especially those that aren't as familiar with my spiritual background, tend to go into this whole, well, that's not spirituality. That is you deciding to make an action, sir. And, that kind of stuff. Well, action and magic go hand in hand because that's part of the manifestation, right? So when we talk about what we're doing in 2022 and how we're going to make our New Year's resolutions, which should be year-round resolutions, actually happen, whether you believe in magic or not, that intention and setting and scheduling and process of getting it together is how you get there, and that is magic. And so, if we're going to talk about the lanai, we're sitting out on the porch with our drinks. Cheers. Granted, I'm not on the porch. Judgment speaks not necessarily of judging others, which is the first thing I think our brains go to, right? We talk about the process of judgment or getting judgment, which means that whatever's coming is what is deserved and what needs to happen to set things on the balance. So, you find yourself in a really hard situation the last couple of years or going into this year, can't escape true judgment. You have to learn to live with it and work through it and get to the next step that you're working on, right? So if you decide to go out and be drunk while driving and hit somebody, it's extreme example, I know, I get it, but it's the best one. You're not going to escape that judgment, whether you get in trouble or not. You have to move it through it and get through it, and that's what 2022 is really going to be about. I think it's a resetting for me. Like, and we've talked about this before. We knew this was coming. The energy's been nuts, but this judgment is putting the pegs back in the rows so that they can be easily put where they belong. The entire pegboard has been uh, thrown apart, and all the pieces are lying at the bottom of the floor. They all you have 40 pegs to put on the wall, and they all have their own exact space. And we now have to take them in the bag and line them back up so that we can start putting them back in place. That's what 2022 is. The Ace of Swords is telling you to go right on out there and do it, but remembering when there's a decision to make, that decision, like a sword, has two edges. You can use one to cut things off so that they no longer have life or can continue, or you can cut them off to have new growth. So when you're talking something that's in this new year, cut the fat, cut off the things you don't need so that you can grow and you'll have something that you can actually work with to move forward, which is life advice anyway. You don't need the lanai to tell you that. And then the tower and the shady pines goes right along with judgment. You're going to work through it. We're all going to work through it, but we have to set our intentions. We have to make it specific, right? You can cut your hand off. That's going to freaking hurt. You're not going to have a hand. But you can also, I don't know, trim the bonsai tree so that it grows into something better, right? And then that tower is the representation of all of the things that are going to change, whether you like it or not. You either sit there and freak out about it and cry about it falling apart, or you're like, well, okay, now I have a blank slate. At least I know I can start from somewhere. We have to figure out in 2022 for me. I have been feeling this for a minute. It came up in some of our other reads that we did, is truly taking your ideas, your thoughts, your energies, and all the stuff that you've had before, cutting them away, smoothing out the concrete on the slab, and starting to rebuild those things. But you can't do that just because you want to. You have to plan it, you have to organize it, you have to commit to it, you have to have intent, you have to think it through, get the stuff, make it happen. Merry Christmas. I mean, Happy New Year. The Golden Girls have spoken.
They have from the grave. It's like the Friends
That's
reunion, just through a Ouija board. Or no,
That's
sorry,
really
tarot
creepy.
cards.
Yeah, I can break out the wee wee board.
We should do that sometime. We should do that
I would.
sometime.
I would definitely do that.
How would we do that? Like over? Like,
I don't know.
Would I have to have one too? And
I don't know. You know, there's a digital Ouija board somewhere. We got to find it. Somebody's done it, you know. And then freaking gremlins start crawling out of the microphones. I'm out.
I mean, technically they're out, right? So because they're crawling out of the micro, yeah.
Point taken. Understandable.
I think that read definitely ties in like directly into like kind of like what it is that we're going to be talking about, right? So I want to kind of come out swinging on this topic right now. Just a heads up, everybody, I'm going to have to take like a quick leave. I ordered a couple of beers, which will be on the way and arriving soon. So I will have to take a quick 2-3 minute leave to go get those and come back. Just a heads up, everybody. But I kind of want to come into this swinging and being all motivational as I do. So I look at, there's something that Mystic mentioned right before he started doing the read about, instead of like talking about New Year's resolutions, talking about kind of like just changing habits, right? Like creating a new lifestyle. Like don't try to do something for a short term, because every time we talk about resolutions, here's the thing. We talk about resolutions every year. Every single one of us. Even if we don't talk about it, we have it in our head. Every single one of us has an idea in our head. It's like, okay, it's a new year. There's something I want to do differently that I wasn't doing the year before. And we like this idea of new starts, of starting over. Okay, we like that idea. And we want to run with that idea. It makes us feel better, like almost like we're wiping the slate clean. Now, the problem with that is because we're not actually wiping the slate clean. You're not cleaning anything. Right? You can't take away all the fucking apple pie that you ate last year. You can't take it away, right? All the Krispy Kremes you bought, you can't take it away, right? All the skipping going to the gym and paying for a year's gym membership and never going, you can't get that money back. It's gone, right? So this idea of cleaning the slate, it's not a bad idea. It's just looked at, I think, in the wrong way. You can clean the slate, but how do you clean the slate? You can't clean the slate by ignoring what you did. You have to accept what you did.
Bleach doesn't work either.
I mean, I guess it depends on what it is you're talking about.
I mean, that's true. That was not a good example, especially any murderers in the audience. I apologize. I left you out there. Jesus.
But, so I think we need to kind of change perspective. And I think, again, like when it comes to magic, like one of the biggest things that we do when we like, why do we like do such elaborate rituals and things like that? Because we want that perspective, right? We want that focus. We want to have our mindset and our headspace there where we want it to be, right? To achieve the thing that we want to achieve through the ritual that we're doing or through the spell that we're casting or whatever it might be, right? And starting out your new year, you can definitely clean the slate. But the first thing that you need to do in order to start with a clean slate is accept and do quite a bit of shadow work and accept where it is that you fucked up before, the things that you want to change. Because in order to implement good habits, you have to first understand what the bad habits were. And then one by one, don't overdo it. Don't try to change everything at once, because I don't care how amazing you are, and you're all amazing. Biting off more than you can chew is a thing. Okay? If you think about how the year is broken up, right? We've got 12 months in the year. We've got 4 seasons, right? So that is 3 months per season. My suggestion would be, which I think would be more manageable, is picking a thing that we want to implement per season. Because I think 3 months is enough time to kind of start really building good habits into certain things that we want to do. So I would pick maybe 1 or 2 things that we want to change per season, which could fit into that season, which make it easier, right, to do. So, for example, it's winter right now for a lot of people. So maybe going to the gym isn't a big thing, isn't something that you're really looking forward to doing because there's snow outside, it's cold outside, you don't want to go out there. So what can we do? Well, maybe focus on eating healthier. Right? Maybe focus on actually cooking full meals. If you're vegetarian, if you're vegan, if you eat meat, whatever, focus on what it is that is going to be good for you, right? Because you're in the house, you've got the time. Maybe focus on what it is that you're going to be doing there. Now, how does this translate into magic and all of this? Well, it's something I've talked about before, and it's routine. Routine is ritual, right? And this is a perfect time to kind of start calling to whatever entity or whatever deity that is that you're working with to kind of give you a kick in the ass, right? I would say that if you're going to ask for anything at this junction, don't ask for a car, don't ask for $1 million. Ask for your deity to give you a kick in the ass, is what I would suggest. Because one thing I've noticed, so for example, me with the book that I'm writing, right? Now, obviously, the book that I'm writing is about Baphomet, right? It is the book of Baphomet, Conversations with the Horned One. But goddamn, does Pyman want to be in on it? Like, that motherfucker keeps popping up. Like, so he popped out of the cards. So I have the cards on the altar. Haven't done anything directly with Pyman yet. And then I start seeing Pyman pop all over the place again. Listen to your deities. Listen to your entities. Listen to the things that are popping out to you. And align those with the things that you're trying to do already in your life. Because what they're doing is they're trying to reach out. They're trying to say, you want to do this? I'm here to help you with this. But you need to listen. You need to sit down, shut up, and listen. Which is what a lot of us don't do. A lot of us don't do enough listening. We do a lot of talking, We like to talk. We like to talk about how we've worked with this demon, we've worked with this deity, we worked with this entity, we did this thing, we did that thing. How about we do a little bit more listening? Because the work that you do with the deities and the entities that you have, that you work with, that's personal to you. That is something that is for you, 100%. The conversations that you have with your deities, with your demons, okay, whatever it is that you're working with at this particular junction, those conversations are sacred. Those secrets are sacred. Those are for you, right? But I think we need to do even more listening and taking things in, instead of kind of blowing it out and saying, well, this is what I'm going to be doing. Don't say this is what you're going to do. Just do it. Don't say it. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody what it is that you're going to do. Just do it. And then let everybody know what it is that you did when you reap the benefits and the fruits of the labor that you put in. Everybody will know what it is that you are doing when you begin to reap the fruits of your labor. You need not tell anyone what it is that you're doing. Just do it. And again, that's one of the biggest problems with New Year's resolutions. We tell everybody what it is that we're doing. And then how often do we actually pull through on them? Almost never. Discipline. Control. Secrets are powerful. Now, I'm looking at Mystic's face. Now, it's one of two things. Either he has nothing to say or he has something to say to the complete contrary.
It's not complete contrary. It's just a different perspective. I mean,
Okay.
I think you're right. It absolutely comes down to doing it. It comes down to making the action. And all of the things that you mentioned are absolutely, I mean, I agree with them, truly. Um, you have to listen. Um, but let's go deeper, a little bit deeper into that. When we talk about listening, one of the things that we forget to do is listen to ourselves, but first identify what those things are. So I'm going to go a little scientific-y, nursey in my brain, and we do this thing called root cause analysis. And I hate it most of the time because it irritates me. But it's asking yourself why about certain things until you get down to the base of what it is. So I liken it to looking at trees on a riverbank. If there's a tree on a riverbank and that tree has roots, right? The roots hold into the ground. Big storm comes by, tree falls over, roots weren't deep enough. So let's talk about getting those roots a little bit deeper or making sure that we go down to the building the substrate from the bottom up. When we talk about how to make change, first you have to identify, do you want to make change? Just because everybody has a New Year's resolution, you don't need one. New Year's resolutions are great because they are a time that get our brains back into thinking about it. So I think they're a good thing. And a lot of people, say, you need to be doing New Year's resolutions all the time. You just do it. Some people do it differently. Fine. It doesn't matter. If you do a New Year's resolution, it's great. But you have to figure out, is it something you actually want to do? Like for me, I am not in great shape and I really don't care. I like ice cream and I like food and I'm going to keep eating it. Do I want to be a little healthier? Sure. Not really high up on my list. But oftentimes I have New Year's resolutions of getting in better shape. Why? Because everybody around me does it. Make sure it's something that you want to work on. And when you identify something that you maybe don't like about things that you do or how you're with a certain thing, go deeper for it. Don't just say, you know what? I really don't like how I look. Well, why don't you like how you look? Well, because I'm fat. Why am I fat? Because I eat. Why do you eat? Because I'm stressed. Why are you stressed? Because I hate my job. Okay, work on your job, right? So when you are looking at how to change things, you've got to look at the soil and the dirt that you're planted in. If your roots aren't planted deep enough of that issue, your tree is going to fall over. That's really, to me, it's really important to make sure you get that far. And that is one of the things that I think magic helps us with the most. People, and we have talked about this ad nauseum. Intent is everything. And you'll hear some people like, no, intent isn't everything. Action is everything. Well, of course. You know what? If you don't start the action, it's not going to happen. But if you don't set the intention to do it, you're not going to follow through either. All the pieces are important. So when you sit down and you've decided that you really want to make a change, whether it's a New Year's resolution or something else in your life, you're going to think about the goal. You're going to think about what you want to do. You're going to put a plan in place. All of those things is the definition of setting your intention. Action is a part of that when we talk about intention. When we say to me, and I could be wrong for most of you, But in any pagan, heathen, left hand, right hand, up, down, well, not right hand path because that's all God's fault. But of any path that you're on, it is personal responsibility for those things, but it's also making sure that you want it and you want to do it and you're going to put in the work for it, right? I think it is extremely important to really consider, do you really want to change it, or are you just trying to do it because somebody else wants you to? Um, I do want to eat healthier. I really don't give a shit about losing any weight at this point, but I do want to eat better. So one of the things we're doing is we're using seasonal food and starting to eat more local things, cooking more things as much as possible. We're doing a really bad job right now. I had pizza tonight. It was really good. Um, but consider that the things that you really want to do, and when you do that, figure out why you're doing them or why you want them to change, and make sure that you understand that first before you go making this big grandiose plan that you probably have made for the last 5 years as a New Year's resolution, and you haven't been able to make it through to that end point. The thing that for me that magic does, number one, it reminds me and forces me to meditate more often, which helps me get to the true clear picture of what I do. Working in a lesser ritual, which is usually a generally informal ritual that doesn't have a lot of specific things to it. Working with your uh, deity or whatever, your meditation, get that on track first. But when you do speak with your deity or the person or the entity that you are communicating with to in your mind or in your thoughts or in your ritual, you're asking for not the answer, but for the pathway to clear itself so that you can get to the answer, because the answer is different for everybody. The path is different for everybody. So if you just want the answer, you're not going to learn what goes along. This actually goes a lot along with, for me, the high priestess card. When we're doing tarot and the high priestess card comes up, it is always a reminder to me that you are trying to get from point A to point B, but you're trying to skip everything in between it. You've got to drive down the road. So, meditate, clear your mind. When you work with your entities, if you work with them, or your source or your universal power, whatever it is you work with, ask for clarity and removal of clouds and obstacles so that you can clearly see what you need to do to get where you need to be. And follow Noella's advice. Start with one Pokeball at a time, just one. It's the old adage, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. But you have to know what you're looking for and what you're trying to eat in the first place. Um, our magic is a big part of that. Your ritual work with your deity. I work mostly with couple of limited deities. I don't really talk about them all that much. Not because I don't want to share them, but just because I don't. I work with them for very specific things. If I need clarity on making a decision, I tend to work with Elin, most people call him Elin of the Ways or Elin of the Host. If I am trying to get back to my roots and go back to the simpler things when things have gotten too complex, I generally go with the archetype of the Green Man, which would be Pan or Carnunos. When I want some serious direction or help with figuring out which way to go in my life, I may, reach out to Morgan or some other deity that's in the area. If I want to get more passion, or if I feel like I'm being too weak with a situation, I may reach out to Inanna. If I want to get myself more riled up to be pissed off at somebody that I should be really mad at, and I'm not for some reason, Hecate is going to be my friend for the next couple of months. So there's different things and different reasons why you reach out to your deities and your entities, but generally it's to remove that cloud so that you can see what you're doing. You can see where you're going, you can set that intent, and you can start making something happen. Now, if you are not a believer in magic and intent and all that stuff, A, why are you here? But fine if you are, right? B is you're interested in making an action, right? Well, what do you need to make action, or what do you need to make a change? You need action, right? But before that, you need to lay out your plan. You need to find out what the goal is. You find the goal, you lay out the plan, you think about it, you put the process in place, and then you act on it. Well, all that stuff before the action is your intent. You're a magical person, even if you don't think you are. Just saying.
Damn. All right. So I kind of got the gist of what you're talking about when I was gone, just by that part right there. So and
More
I kind of
listening,
like,
less talking. I'm just kidding.
um, so and I kind of like that you laid out like the different deities that you work with and why you work with them, right? So,
I don't just ask them to do something for me. That's the big thing. You ask them to
huh.
help you get to where you want to be so that you can do it yourself. They give you the pattern. You still have to do the stitches.
Well, so here's what I do, and it's a little bit different. So obviously, everybody knows by now that my primary, like my patron deity, my focus is Baphomet. Which, Mr. Mike, I will be answering your comment here, or like commenting on your comment, I suppose, here in a second, because I think it needs to be addressed. But I don't ask for anything. I literally don't. I don't set up my altar and light my candles and light my incense and turn off my lights and put on my robes
Buddy.
and ask for anything. What I do is I light my candles, I light my incense, I put on my robes, and I kneel in front of my altar and I listen. And I suppose if I were to ask any question, my focus is, what do you want me to know? What do you want to tell me? What do you want to share with me? What gift do you want to give me? What gift do I need? What am I missing? And that process of listening can take well over an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of sitting and focusing. So I've never put much stock into chants or mantras. And though they're very wonderful things to use and have, I'll be quite honest. I actually use mantras from other people. To be more specific, I know I keep mentioning him, but Behemoth X. The one mantra of his that I always use, or at least I always play in the background and I listen to while I'm focusing, is kind of like a meditation kind of thing because it puts me in the zone, is Awakening the Black Flame. I use that mantra so much. And that's okay. Like if you can't come up with your own mantras, if you can't come up with your own chants, and you find one that somebody else did that they're providing publicly and that works for you, don't let anybody shame you and say, well, you need to come up with your own shit. Honestly, anybody that tells you something like that are just fucking idiots. When the time comes and a mantra is given to you from your deity, wonderful, awesome. Write it down, use it, record it, replay it. Use that. You know, it's part of you at that point. But I think for me, my focus and my idea on things is not to ask for anything. Because what I do through ritual is dedication. I dedicate my time and my energy to the deity. I'm not expecting that my deity give me his or her time or their time for nothing. Like, now, it kind of depends on how you look at it. Some people look at our deities as representations, as ideas, as concepts, as focal points to kind of harness a particular, focal energy into one direction, like much like what Mystic was saying. I mean, I'm not saying you're saying Mystic does not believe in his deities, but I'm saying that, Mystic has mentioned that he uses his deities as kind of like a focal point. That he doesn't necessarily believe that the deity's actually up in the sky doing whatever it is that they do in their lore, but rather...
Well, I think the better way, and I don't want to, because I want to hear the rest of your thing, but just to
Mhm.
lighten up on that one, not whatever. I don't even know what I'm trying to say there, but it's I do exactly. I don't believe that the data's up there. Like Caradwin's not up there stirring the pot, spilling the liquid on Guion to become a piece of grain that the hen eats in the story. But um, I don't know. I can't explain it. I don't think I'm able to, in my spirituality, know exactly what it is. So those representations support the ideas of what they are and help think of that process and set that intention, like
Mhm.
you were saying, that focus.
Mhm. And then that's fine. And if you look at your deities that way, then that's fine. Everybody's going to manage it differently,
Mhm. And if they
right?
are stirring in the sky, that's good. I didn't mean to sound like that either. That's fine. I mean, and that may be what it actually is. We don't know, or
Hmm.
I don't know.
And none of us know. I don't know if like Baphomet is actually, like a horned goat god living half in hell and half in heaven. I don't know.
I think both are true. I think they're both things.
I do think so. I think they have to be.
Like, I do
I
think
mean,
there is a Caradwin thing somewhere. I just don't know how
mhm,
to manifest it without thinking in my human brain, which is very limited. But I think it's like what you're talking about. It's really like your system of how you do ritual and think with Baphomet and King Paimon and those things is probably very similar to the way a lot of people do with their different deities and however that thought process is that they work through. But this that system that's important. I think of most things through my deities through the elements because A,
mhm,
it's how I was brought up. B, it makes sense to a Virgo because it's
mhm,
organized. Like when I ask, the same way, I don't ask for money. I don't ask for the answers. I ask for the direction and for the pathway to be cleared. But I ask for it in my head when I'm talking to that entity or that thought, that focal point. I'm asking through each lens. I say, okay, so if I need to be looking to improve my money situation, or what part of my being as it relates to earth do I need to look at? Fire, water, air.
mhm,
So that makes me as the individual with my guidance put in place what part of tangible things do I need to work on? What part of thoughts and creativity do I need to work on? What part of my emotion do I need to work on? And what part of
mhm,
my knowledge do I need to work on? And how do I connect all that to my spirit and make something
mhm.
actually happen? It's the same
Yeah,
thing, just different words and
yeah,
different synapses are firing, but it's the
yeah.
same result.
It's just, yeah, it's the same idea. I mean, and that's the beautiful thing about the craft. Like that's the beautiful thing about whether it's left hand path or otherwise. Is like what do people keep saying about the left hand path? That the left hand path is a solitary path, and for the most part, that's true. Do I think that it needs to be like that? No, I don't think it needs to be like that. I do think that we can open up, and I do think that we can work together, regardless of the path that we're on. Like full heartedly, I do believe that we can. I just think we need to kind of get smacked in the back of the fucking head a couple of times so we can make sense of shit and stop giving each other shit for how we do things. Once we can get past that, then hey, Star Trek's actually a possibility.
Mhm.
If you got that reference, congratulations. If you didn't, I'm sorry. You haven't lived yet. Uh, so you know, it's one of those things that for me, the way that I look at it when I work with a deity or when I work with, especially like with Baphomet or any of the deities. So currently, I'm working with three. I'm working with King Paimon. I'm working with Baphomet. I'm working with Hel. Um, and the idea for me is to dedicate time in listening, which is something that most people don't do when they start, working magic. Well, what's like one of the first things? Yeah, I'm guilty of this too. I'm totally fucking guilty of this. But what's one of the first things that we start doing when we learn magic is we start, trying to, wield our magic for, self progression, self betterment, but like in a very mundane way. What do we ask for? We ask for money. We ask for cars, computers, people. Go ahead.
There's a huge bell curve for that too, if you've noticed. Like, I don't I think you'll agree with this, you may not, but the bell curve, for me with magic, when I started now close to 30 years ago, 25, 26 years ago, and I only say that because I've screwed up a lot of shit. And I'm not better than anybody who's been doing it for 1 year. I am not. Uh, but you start out on that bell curve at on this side when you first start year 1 to year 30, and year 1 is like everything is mundane. I want all this stuff and all these things, but it's not it's a very limited concept of that mundane stuff. And then you start moving up into the real magic and manifestation growing. And then on the other end, you kind of go back down that bell curve and like, "Look, I just want my knees not to hurt. So can you help me figure this shit out?" So you get back to that mundane, but it's the thought process behind it is now you're not asking for somebody to give you something or an entity. And I think the most valuable thing you can give to anybody, whether it is a human being or anything, is time. and listening. And that's true for human beings. When you listen to somebody, that you are valuing their comment, their input, and you are using the energy in your body. So think about this, and this is going to be really long-winded. I came from I've used this before, like when we first started podcasts, and it is, you know, there's rainwater and the rain falls down on the earth grows wheat, and then the wheat is eaten by a fish, and then a bird eats the fish, and then the bird gets eaten by a cow, and then the cow becomes, and I know this is bad for you if you're a vegetarian, but the cow becomes a hamburger. You eat the hamburger. Then that energy is what your body uses to create neurons and to create thought process. And then you're using that valuable thought process to listen and consider somebody else's thought process that came in much the same manner. That is a huge, huge, huge length of energy and transfer that has happened to get to that thought, right? And when you think of it that way, it's like, oh, time is listening time, and giving somebody else that time to listen to them is incredibly valuable. And we do not place enough energy or enough thought into that whole idea of listening, because
I
that's where the
completely
magic
agree.
happens, right?
He does.
And I just, it's always been stressful to me to think, and I'm the same way. I talk way too much, especially even when I'm, before I meditated a lot, I would sit in my hotel room on the floor, and I would meditate, and my brain would go off to a million things, or I would start ritual too soon. Hell, I've start tarot too soon sometimes, even on this podcast. And when I do, you can tell a difference. It is a very clear difference, because I haven't stopped to listen to what's around me and let the energy
hmm
kind of balance out and flow out and get back to where I need to be.
hmm Exactly. And I think like, so for example, like the way that I do things is it's very specifically that it's listening, and which is why listening takes longer. Like it's pretty quick. You can shit out a ritual or a spell in 15-20 minutes if you're just asking for something. You draw up your sigils, you do your little poem, you light a candle, you burn your paper, you throw it in the cauldron, you get your mojo bag, whatever, right? You can whip something up in about 20 minutes if you're just straight asking for something. But when you
So
actually go ahead.
yeah, so this is, it's gonna be another subject. So you might need to finish. I just don't, like, it just popped into my brain. What do you feel different? And I hopefully, chat, if you are listening, I would like to see some answers in the chat too. To me, there's different kinds of rituals that we do, which I think is true for everybody. Like, you have a ritual for, the season change or whatever, like we do. We do a lot of turn of the wheel stuff. And we do ritual in reverence, not worship, but reverence of or respect to a deity or a season change or a representation. Completely different from a ritual that you're doing to gather or gain something. And then when you do that ritual, it's not one time. A lot of it's an ongoing, repetitive, or it's not a ritual. It's just a thing that you did.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Ritual is defined as ongoing, repetitive, consistent, intention setting over time. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's important to me that people understand, no matter what your path is, and this is the same for even the right hand, I think, that there is one there, well, except for the worship part, because I don't worship any deity. That's just not, I don't think that is showing respect to a deity. But respecting and showing reverence for and honoring, that's actually the better word, of a deity during a ritual is one thing, versus when you're actually working with somebody like you are with Baphomet, like I do with Carnunos.
Mm-hmm.
Very specific, very tuned, very consistent, ongoing, not asking for anything. I'm literally just, and I do, well, I mean, I guess I do ask for guidance, like a
Mm-hmm.
guidance, but I'm not asking for money or for a job or for a house or for anything tangible or anything like that. It's like, where do I go next? Where can I put my foot next that's going to be a good place for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean that's pretty much what it is. I mean, again, like it kind of touches base on the thing that we talked about it before, where some people would consider working that way with a deity as high magic, and then the low magic kind of being like actually asking for kind of like mundane possessions and things of that nature. Um, I'm not necessarily, again, I'll reiterate the point. I'm not necessarily comfortable using those terms because it kind of like creates a differential of one being better than the other, right? When you think of high and low. Um,
Yeah.
And I don't think necessarily one is better than the other. Just think it's a different way of kind of a different path to go to get to the same direction, essentially. Um, because eventually, at some point, the people that are practicing the magic, that's giving them the things that are from the mundane, eventually they're going to get to the point where they just want knowledge, they just want understanding, they want to be connected to something deeper, and they're going to get to that point where they're going to want to work with the deity, on that level. Most people do. Um, we have that with our main entities. It's
Mhm.
a part of life, not just something done every full moon. It's every day. Exactly, Scarlett. Exactly. And it is like I do at least a ritual a day or a ritual every other day, with Boffin. I've got the altar right there. The altar is like sitting right there. And again, it's something that I think that the entities that you work with truly appreciate the fact that when you kneel and you sit in front of them and you're connecting with them, you're not immediately asking them for something. You're listening to what they have to say.
Yeah, I've had in my experience with rituals, well, not to forget, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of different discussions about what the difference between low magic and high magic. Generally, as terminology is, and this is more of a Wiccan process when it comes to that. Like a generic pagan or Wiccan is that low magic is your everyday folk magic, and high magic is your ritualed, spaced, formative magic. And I don't care either way. I think high magic, low, those things, they're just not necessary. You do what you do and do what you do. But working with main entities, to me, it's important. Like I do have main entities, and I call it, matron, patrons, whatever you want to call them. I have had them while I'm having a conversation, bring somebody else in and bring a different perspective in, and then pass me off. I've been passed off before. That's terrible. I don't have time for you to take this one. This is, this entity is a little bit better for you right now. And it's something where you have to listen and pay attention when you see that change, because it's not like, a new name badge comes in front of your view. I think that's really important. And there, the way ritual works for me, I enjoy the reverence ritual and I enjoy writing them. I enjoy, me and Rook have actually written quite a few. We're working trying to get one for every part of the turn of the wheel as it comes to ritual for season change and for making sure you're connected, because that's important to us, is to be connected to the cycles and paying attention to the world around us as it changes, especially now living in Florida because we don't see those seasons as much. It's harder to stay connected. Christmas doesn't feel like Christmas time, Yule time, whatever you celebrate. It's
Mm-hmm.
just weird. And I'm sure you experience that too,
Mm-hmm.
because it's different when it's 85 degrees out and there's Christmas tree lights up. It gets confusing if you're not from here, right?
It
You
does.
go from, yeah, it's just weird. So it's just something that needs to be done from your own perspective and from your own process. But the idea is the same. The ritual is the thing that you repeat. And what pops into my head when I'm doing a ritual is different depending on who's with me, where I'm at, what's going on. And I will tell you, the things that make it better are meditating beforehand, the right music for me. And I'm not, this isn't true for everybody, but for me, the right music, if I get the right drum beat or binaural beat or the right sound, like I'll be gone for 4 hours and have no clue. It's like 3 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And when I'm out of it, it's hazy. I feel like I've had a little bit of a seizure. Like I don't know what's going on for a minute. Like you have to come out of it, which is why you're supposed to
Mm-hmm.
have food and drink. It's part of the end of a ritual usually. Not just to offer it to your deity. That's weird to me. I'm not going to give fake food, food to somebody else. No. If I'm going to give food, food and beer to a deity, it's going to be animal food to give to the wildlife, right? And water, a
Mm-hmm.
water bucket for animals to drink out of. But it's just that process of the ritual is the process of doing those repetitive things to get your mind in the right
Mm-hmm.
mind space. And even though like unexplained possibilities was talking about not giving us 2 cents, it doesn't work with or do rituals, I would
Mm-hmm.
beg to differ. I can guarantee you we can find some rituals you do. They may not be what you would consider magic, but when you get ready
Mm-hmm.
for a podcast, when you get ready to record, there's a ritual. You do the same thing over and over to get yourself into the right situation for what you're about to do. It's the same thing. You do a ritual before you get in the car, right? You get in your car, you put your seatbelt on, shut your car, lock the door, start the car, get ready, turn your seat, make everything right. There's a ritual to it. It's the same thing. So if you don't work with deities and you don't do that kind of magic, you can still understand it very well, I think.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And frequency is a huge thing, Mr. Mike. I love that.
Actually,
Sorry.
Mr. Mike, because I kind of skipped over like what you had mentioned. So Mr. Mike had written earlier in, he says, I honestly keep seeing Baphomet everywhere. I just started my whole spiritual path generally. I do work with dragons, but in no way feel ready to work with Baphomet, though. I'm too inexperienced. So I would venture to say that there is no level of being experienced or inexperienced to working with any particular entity or deity. If an entity or a deity is calling to you, they're calling to you. And if you're comfortable working with them, then you should probably work with them because that means they have something that they want to give you. It's much like, King Paimon. Now, the thing is for King Paimon, for me, like, it never crossed my mind to work with King Paimon until I started seeing King Paimon fucking everywhere when I started writing this book. And come to find out that King Paimon is, in that house, the house of kind of like creativity, the arts, things like that. It facilitates the arts and creativity. So it's definitely something that kind of made sense. And then, like, again, I grabbed, my Oracle deck, my occult tarot, and I shuffled it, and I just said, hey, which one of you want to work with me? And I just shuffled, flipped the top card, fucking King Paimon. And so, like, I can't ignore that. Because much before that, I started seeing King Paimon fucking everywhere on the internet. Right? And it was easy, like the things I was seeing on the internet, it was easy to sit there and say, well, I mean, I run a podcast on the occult, for fuck's sake. So, like, it's pretty easy to sit there and say, all of these things popping up about King Paimon, are because of the stuff that I'm talking about and researching and looking at on YouTube and other places, so it's kind of like, I'm like, I can write it off. Shuffling that deck the way that I shuffled that deck and then flipping out the top card and it's King Paimon, I can't ignore that. I can't sit there and say, oh, well, that's just fucking shit. No, with everything else that led up to it, I can't. And then I put the card on the altar and I stopped seeing King Paimon everywhere. Like, okay, all right, cool. So, like, setting this up to work with King Paimon, everything's cool now. Took me a little while to kind of get to, do anything. And what do you know? I start seeing King Paimon everywhere on the internet again. And it's like, all right, I get it. I'm sorry. Like, we're going to get to it. We're going to get to this point. I promise. All right. So signs can be presented in things that can be very, very well misconstrued as coincidence. Always understand, at least in my opinion, that coincidence does not exist. Everything happens for a reason. And so if you're seeing Baphomet everywhere, there is a reason you are seeing Baphomet everywhere. It is not by chance. And I would say, for me personally, and especially with my experience, Baphomet's been like the deity that I've worked with since almost like day one. So if you're seeing Baphomet everywhere, then, maybe it's kind of time that, like, you kind of open that gate. And exactly. So he says, like, Mr. Mike says, I honestly used to have a huge personal bias against Baphomet. You've changed my mind, as did Behemoth X and a few others. I think I need to apologize and listen to what Baphomet can teach me. Exactly. And a lot of people have that personal bias against Baphomet. Like, Baphomet is an interesting deity within the occult, because Baphomet is a deity that many people in the occult refuse to accept as a deity. They say that, like, Baphomet is nothing more than a representation of the occult with a physical form. So there's that aspect of it. Then there's the other part of it where, quite literally, if you look at the history of the word Baphomet, it was a linguistic misunderstanding between the Templar and I think it was the Turkish at the time. Turkish, I think. They were saying Muhammad, and the Templar just understood it as Baphomet.
Baphomet. Muhammad
Exactly.
Baphomet. I
Hmm.
can see that.
Yeah, and so it was like a linguistic, misunderstanding. So here's the thing. So this is my explanation for that. And this is my explanation for all of the demons and deities and entities that we work with. Something that I think, this is my personal opinion. You don't have to subscribe to this. I have not seen this written anywhere, but from everything that I've learned, this is how I understand it. Everything that we worship in society today, whether it's God, Jesus, Baphomet, Satan, the devil, Lucifer, King Paimon, Kronos, like who or whatever it is that you're worshiping, are new names for old gods. And I believe inside of myself wholeheartedly that the names and representations that we use are names and representations that they wanted us to use. Each deity, each entity made the decision of how it is that they wanted to come back, how it is that they wanted to be represented in this new era that was unfolding in society. And how Baphomet was brought forth was in such a way that if you're going to believe in Baphomet, if you're going to work with Baphomet, you need some faith. You need some actual belief, like unequivocal belief beyond a shadow of a doubt to work with Baphomet. Because there's so much information against the existence of Baphomet. However, Baphomet is the largest image across the left-hand path. Like across the left-hand path. Baphomet's everywhere. Baphomet is the initial image that we see when we're introduced to the left-hand path, when we're introduced to Satanism, LaVeyan Satanism, the sigil of Baphomet. There's some heavy work going on in the background there that I think that needs to be examined further and needs to be understood. And which is why I have put the amount of years into Baphomet that I've put into Baphomet, which is the reason why I fully believe that Baphomet has been writing through me. Call me crazy, call me insane. Maybe.
Crazy, insane.
Hey, maybe. You never know, right? I mean, I've had some shit happen, so hey. But I fully believe that Baphomet has written through me. Baphomet's the devil for everybody. That's the thing. Baphomet is the poster child for the Church of Satan, for the Satanic Temple. But that's all misunderstanding. That's all misrepresentation.
I want to just, I don't want to forget my other thought, but when it comes to Baphomet being the devil in modern tarot, be very careful, I think, with that, because a lot of depictions of the horned god and or a devil with horns is not the representation of Baphomet specifically. There's differences, and it's not just differences in images. The intent of the writer of the tarot deck or the use of the tarot deck is different, and you obviously, as we've talked about again ad nauseum, Christianity, you're not supposed to. Bleh, that's all I got for them. It just is as if you talk about bastardizing something, Christianity has done that to just about everything that's existed, including human beings, and we don't even see that. But anyway, I believe that for the most part, until we learn something different, that energy is not created nor destroyed. It is
Mm-hmm.
transformed, transmuted, it's
Mm-hmm.
grouped, it's energized, it's brought together. It is in so many different forms and ways that we will never, ever, ever understand or experience in our lifetime anyway. I do believe that if an entity presents itself to you, you can call that entity doorknob, and that's an entity. It exists. You can call it or image it however the hell you want that
Mm-hmm.
gets you what you need out of it. as a human being, because everything that we see is relevant through our eyes and exists through our own experience. So you don't, and we don't have a lot to pull from, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would venture that my personal representation of the horned god, which I am, the green man, is a huge. It is the archetype of my life. Like it's my whole spirituality is centered around archetypes of the green man, and I truly believe that that includes Carnunos, Pan, Hern the
Mm-hmm.
Hunter, Baphomet, and probably a thousand other horned gods that are considered, all of them considered the devil in
Mm-hmm.
Christianity, but
I mean, I have
through
the
Christianity.
devil I have the devil card tapestry.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, we are reaching out in our spirituality using the energy again, that long trail of energy that I talked about earlier, that's even longer
Mm-hmm.
than we can ever describe because we don't know where it even came from at some point. And we're using that to honor an idea, a thought, a concept, or a deity or an entity that embodies that. It's real. It to me, when somebody says, "Oh, Baphomet isn't real," I don't honor Baphomet, but I honor a representation of the raw energy of making things happen for oneself and for finding one's own way. And I think that kind of supports what I think
Mm-hmm.
Baphomet would mean in most cases. So we may have different names, we may have different things. We can even talk about God if you want in the Christian religion. I believe that the God that Christian religion actually is a divine source representation of all the things. It has just been so screwed up by human beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that energy and that work that we do with our deity or with our guidance, it is so much more similar than we think. Last week we had on Odin's Eye Tarot, right, with the dragon.
Mm-hmm.
I have a really strong pull for that now, and I've never thought of that before. And when you think about it, it's the same archetypes. It's the same ideas that get us to that thing, and we can call it whatever we need to and work with that deity that truly
Mm-hmm.
exists. And they exist. If you, and I'm not saying somebody on TikTok or some other stupid thing saying like there's the god of toilet paper, there, sure, I guess, clean up your messes. I don't know. But if you are true and honest to what it is that you are trying to do and be better and to improve your life, you will improve others' lives. So that's
Mm-hmm.
godlike. And you will become a better person and closer to God, which, whether we admit it or not, that's really what we're trying to do in this life. If you believe in like reincarnation, right? You're trying to get to
Mm-hmm.
that godlike state so you can stop reincarnating because you're tired. Um, but all of it comes down to the same thing. It's us working to do better by using our spirituality because we don't know what it is all the time. So we create the representation, we have it. And I get really, really irritated when people say that, well, that doesn't exist. Well, Baphomet's
Mm-hmm.
only been around for 40 years. I'm like, okay, Baphomet, the statue that was used in certain, visualized things, sure. But Baphomet's real name or old name or whatever wanted to be before might have been Habubula Kadubula. I don't know. You know, something that our mouths can't actually create because he's an alien from another planet. Who knows? What we
Mm-hmm.
do know is that when we work with the deity that we are working with, we learn stuff, we feel more connected, we gather knowledge, we get together with things pull together, and it does change your life. I mean, there's no doubt
It
about it. When
does.
you work properly in any pagan or left hand path deity, you get better. So you can't tell me that that's not real.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
so
can tell
frustrating.
you. I mean, I can tell you, like, despite what everybody had said about, Baphomet and, you know, Baphomet not being, or just being a representation of the occult, you know, like just a lot of things that people have said. I was like, because I was much like Mystic, like when I was younger. Like, so first I kind of like, when I got into everything, I got in on the Wicca side of things, which I think most of us, at least within our age bracket, you know, our jump in was Wicca. Like that was a thing. Gerald Gardner, I guess. Thank you, you hippie, sex loving son of a bitch. Um, you know, and we jumped in. We kind of jumped on that bandwagon. And so when I jumped in on that bandwagon, I mean, I tried to do the whole triple goddess thing and stuff like that. didn't jive with me too much. The maid and the mother crow and all that stuff. And then, I found Pan or Pan, however you want to pronounce it, right? Or the Green Man. And that called to me. And then through that, I'm like, I like the representation of Pan. I like the representation of, the Green Man, the god of the wild hunt and everything, masculine, all of these things, fertility, all of these types of things. But there's still something pulling me, right? There's still something pulling me. And I remember the first time I saw the image of Baphomet, the one that's right there in the middle. And that image blew me away. I was like, wait a minute. Well, that kind of looks like...
Was it the boobs?
I mean, it was kind of part
I'm
of
kidding.
it.
I'm kidding.
I was a horny 15-year-old, right? No, just kidding. I'm kidding too, but, I was a horny 15-year-old and I just needed some porn. And like, there's boobs right there. So it's like, all right, let's go. No, I was just kidding.
Hey, that's why I went with Pan. It wasn't the boobs.
There you go. But the image blew me away. Like the image definitely pulled me in. And then obviously like my first introduction to like the left-hand path and, things like that, that was, the Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey and, the Necronomicon and, all those things. It's kind of like I started down that path. Then I, got a little bit into like Aleister Crowley and, all that stuff. And I'm not gonna lie. I discovered Aleister Crowley through Ozzy Osbourne. I had no idea who the fuck Aleister Crowley was. Heard the song Mr. Crowley, read the lyrics. I was like, wait a minute. Went to the library, looked up Crowley, found Aleister Crowley, took a couple of books out. Pretty interesting. Yes, that's how fucking old I am. I had to go to the library, look up a name in a Rolodex, then go to the section and take the books out to read them.
Dewey
No
Decimal
Google.
System for the win.
No Google. So
that's a T-shirt.
Right? So that was kind of like my introduction to like kind of like the left-hand path. And I didn't call it the left-hand path back then. I didn't know what the fuck to call it, which is why for the longest time I just called myself pagan. I was like, that's what I am. I'm a pagan, like just general fucking term. I actually didn't start calling myself left-hand path until recently. Into one of the interviews that I did with
You're still pagan, by the way, if anybody was wondering.
Yeah, I know, but hold on. What was his name?
That wasn't for you. That was for them. Musician or no?
Musician.
Christoph Bathory?
Yeah, thank you, Christoph. Jesus, Christoph.
How do I
if you're
know
watching
that?
this, I'm sorry. I don't know.
You're gonna have to mute that part of the stream,
right? When we interviewed Christoph, we did a special episode, a special conversation with Christoph Bathory about the left-hand path because he said that he followed the left-hand path. At that point, I had no idea what the left-hand path was, because I really hadn't heard of it up until that point. And then, like, kind of like the more that I looked into it, it's like, well, that's what I do. Just off the cuff, that's what I do, right? I mean, that's what I am. I'm left-hand. I'm not a Satanist. I'm not necessarily like, I'm not like, a kitchen witch or hearth witch or anything like that. Like, that type of pagan. I work with darker entities like that. That's my focus. I'm left-hand path. And it just fits and it feels right. It feels right to say it. Now, here's another thing. Just because you decide, just like I did, if you decide to kind of like switch how you label yourself, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. If you find a particular label that identifies you better than the label that you're currently using, don't feel like you're cheapening yourself or you're bringing yourself back to square one. You're not. What you're doing is you're understanding yourself more. You're understanding what it is that you're doing more. So every bit of progress that you've made from then to now still remains. It's just it's heightened.
That is so important for people to understand. When you changing your people talk about like, I think I need to change my path or I think I need to go in a different direction. So you're always going to be going on a different direction, even within a path or whatever it is you're doing. And even when we talk about that both of us, and it's true, both of us got started in Wiccan, and neither one of us consider ourselves Wiccan now. That doesn't negate anything about being Wiccan. It's our path. I don't and have never considered myself left hand path. One of the things that I've always focused on was being very balanced. Um, I'm not focused on just doing white light and positive things. I will hex a person. And I know we've talked about that before. There's things that we'll do that is part of our path that we make for ourselves. And whatever way you go, if you change every other day, that's fine. Just make sure that you are doing what Malice said in the beginning, which is listening to what you're doing and giving it time to actually come up and listen. You know what I mean? Like everything in my path that I've tried to push to get a response from or push to move into has always gone its own pace. For example, am still studying in druid work, and I wanted so bad. It's like I want to get through this. This is great. We are going so incredibly slow because those lessons have to be learned on their own time. And it's just a part of my overall experience. I don't consider myself a druid. Like it's not my path. But the path does speak to me and I want to learn from it. So I'm using it as part of it. That's why I consider myself pagan because it's just easier, especially to explain to people. But do and listen and process through the way that you need to go, you know? And I don't know. It's just it's. I think that was just a really important piece for people to understand about paths. There are so many different ways to describe your path, and I can guarantee you, if there are 255,672 people that consider themselves left-hand path, there are that many different ways to experience it, and that is extremely important.
Completely agreed. Completely. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I constantly talk about kind of like the idea of occult unification, kind of bringing everybody together under kind of like the idea of one umbrella, not one path. Don't misunderstand it. Don't misconstrue it. I'm not talking about one path, one idea. There's a difference, and that idea is protecting each other. I've talked about this 100,000 times, and I'll continue talking about it on this show because it's an idea that is extremely important to me. Because regardless of the path that you're on, we are capable of respecting each other. If you look at, for example, Mystic and myself, in so many ways, him and I are polar opposites. Like, do we have parallels? Do we have crossovers, overlaps? Yes, we do. We have overlaps, we have crossovers, we have all those things. But generally speaking, if you listen to the things that Mystic has to say and you listen to the things that I have to say, we're very different. We're very, very different. And that's not a problem. We respect each other. I respect his path. He respects my path. And we don't have conflict with that. We can discuss each other's ideas. We can disagree with each other's ideas. And we can learn from each other. Okay? Not necessarily. That's the thing.
I think and I see the question you're answering, and that's important. But I think if me, you, and Rook, and 10 other people all wrote our paths down or drew our paths, like just free draw, like not even thinking about it, and we drew them on transparency paper, and you laid them down, they'd all match up. And I think that's one of the things that people forget about how spirituality works. They're going to be different words, different symbols, but they're going to line up because we're all trying to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. So
go ahead,
Slim Lewis. To sit there and say, and I'm not attacking you, I am debating you, but I'm not attacking you, though I am calling you out. To sit there and say the left-hand path is a solitary path. You are limiting the possibilities of what it is that you can do. Because your very next statement after that is do what works for you as the individual. And if what works for me as the individual is working with other people in the left-hand path, then therefore it is no longer a solitary path, but that is what works for me. And that is what's going to work for the other people that are willing to work for me, which in case makes it not a solitary path. It can be a solitary path for some people, of course, and that's perfectly fine. But to sit there and say that something is absolutely, this one thing is extremely limiting to the possibilities of the things that you could achieve by opening yourself up and going down that path completely and learning from other people, because what we do is we learn from each other. So especially within the craft, especially within the left-hand path, especially within occultism, to say that something is a solitary path is limiting yourself on the amount of knowledge that you can take and things that you can learn from other people by working with them. So I do full-heartedly disagree with the statement or idea that the left-hand path is a solitary path.
If we just had two categories, and there was at the very base of it, right, left hand and right hand, because really nobody has a middle hand, I don't think,
Not that I've heard of, but I mean, it
right?
could be a thing, I guess.
I think other than maybe a very limited few, every single person would be on the left hand, like be considered left hand path if you broke it down to just those two buckets, right? And it was earlier somebody said something and it got my brain kind of turning, trying to think of what would be the right phrase to explain the difference between those two. And I do get it, and I think there's some misconception. Um, if I considered myself, or if I consider somebody right hand path, then my motto would be, well, blame God for everything, number one. But my motto would be, I am here to serve others. If I'm left hand path, my motto would be, I'm here to serve myself so that I can be a better individual, which ultimately begets the same end result, right? And so self centered is a connotated word that is inappropriate to use to describe it. And I can't think of a better term for it. But um, I would assume, and I'm thinking, and I know Slim Lewis has clarified to me, it is, yeah. And I think if we look at the word solitary path, I think, like when I first read that, those two sentences together, my thought was it is a path about the individual, which I think is true. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think the left hand path to me, and this includes me in
Mm-hmm.
this bucket, my intent is never to change others because I don't believe you can. My
Mm-hmm.
intent is to change myself, and then
Mm-hmm.
maybe along the way, others will be better for it as well.
Mm-hmm. That's all
So,
you can do.
yeah,
That's all you can do. And
yeah,
Slim Lewis, thank you for clarifying. I didn't mean to go on the attack there if it felt like I was attacking you, but that definitely does clarify significantly. Because it is to the individual. Some people prefer to work completely by themselves, and that's perfectly fine. Because obviously, we do know that there are other ways that we can,
yeah.
you know, get knowledge and obtain
I'm a
knowledge and
hybrid.
things like that.
I'm
So
a hybrid. I do both.
and
You can
and
be solitary and coven based.
in child lie, I agree. Um, for me, I think the left-hand path is significantly focuses on balance more than other paths that I've noticed in my experience. That's not to say that balance is not obtained, you know, through other paths and doesn't work for other people to obtain balance. But I do believe that the left-hand path is very blatantly about balance, and it's also one of the reasons that Baphomet is the primary deity that I worship, that I dedicate to, because Baphomet is the epitome of balance. Is again, I always keep saying this, is both the masculine and the feminine, and the low and the high, and the light and the dark, and all of these things simultaneously. And one of the things that I've always tried to achieve through the magic that I weave is balance of self. Because if I have balance of myself and I can understand myself better than anyone else, I feel like I'm turning into a Dr. Seuss book over here. There's a lot of rhyming words in this conversation. Um, right, I am the dark Dr. Seuss. But I think that balance is necessary, right? In order for us to kind of like truly kind of obtain what it is that we're looking for. And I think all of us are generally kind of looking for the same thing, where we're looking to grow ourselves, where we're looking to become better, right? And in my opinion, That's not money. That's not a car. That's not a house. Those things may help, to help you, calm the human aspect of ourselves, the psychological aspect of things. But that's not the point. And I believe that when you truly dedicate yourself to a deity, to an entity, the things that you require, the things that you need, your necessities are met naturally because you are giving your deity something that you can't get back. You're giving time and you're listening to what it is that they want to share with you. And this is like the point that I was trying to make earlier on, is that sadly, one of the things that I notice with a lot of practitioners, we're not listening enough. So when I founded the Order of Baphomet, I wanted to keep the tenets as simple as possible. You have with, the Church of Satan, the 9 satanic tenets, and then you have, I think, maybe 10 or 12 tenets with the satanic temple. And I wanted to first and foremost put out there and say, first and foremost, we are not a satanic order. We're not affiliated with or associated with or even remotely close to being the satanic temple or the Church of Satan. Though we do not turn away anybody that's interested in coming in and learning. Anyone and everyone is welcome. The 3 primary tenets, the only 3 tenets at all: learn, teach, silence. That's it. First one, the most important. Learn. Learn everything that you need to learn, that you can learn from everyone around you at all times. Always take in, always absorb, always be learning. Teach. Teach when you can, where it is appropriate, where there is someone that is willing to learn from you. And you can only really teach someone that is willing to learn. You can't throw your ideas at somebody else and expect them to adopt them. If somebody asks and you find it that they're legitimate and they want to learn from you, teach them. And then silence. If you're not learning and you can't teach anything, then be silent. Because when you're silent, those opportunities to learn or teach become more evident, become more visible. And then to kind of add on to that, the reason why within the tenets, I'm not adding in things like be a good person and don't treat other people like shit and, all of these types of things. Karma is a thing, and the karma you create comes back to you. If you need your spiritual path literally to have in writing that you need to be a good person, then the Order of Baphomet probably isn't for you, because that just needs to be kind of like a given. You create your own karma. You're going to do what it is that you're going to do for you. If you're going to curse people, you're going to curse people. You're going to hex people, you're going to hex people. You're going to try to help them, you're going to try to help them. And everything that you do, each individual thing that you do, creates karma for you. And you will pay your karma in due time. You don't need me or the order to sit there and tell you that you need to be a good fucking person, or that you need to be a decent individual, or that you need to treat people with kindness, or that you need to be, open, tolerant, and accepting of people that are different than yourself. If you can't do that by yourself as is right now, who the fuck am I to sit there and tell you that you need to be doing it? So that was the reason why I decided to kind of say, those are the 3 tenets. The tenets for the practice. You as a person, that's on you, not me.
I'm going to say this in complete jest.
Okay.
So please don't take it personally, Slim Lewis, but I want to ban you right now for bad timing. Literally, like you're in number two, and I just can't hold it back because and like for the last 2 minutes, I've been saying he vibes with Baphomet in a boat. He vibes with Baphomet as a goat. I can't like, so that's what I was
That's
laughing
good.
about. Not because it was at the worst possible time. You're like talking about your tenants, and I'm over here. I can't hold it back. So kidding, Slim Lewis, but that was really bad. Good timing. I'm telling
Good
you,
joke, bad
t-shirts.
timing.
Yeah, t-shirts coming out the back end there. But no, I'm on board. I think that makes a lot of sense. I like those. I like the tenants. Um, and I think it's important to be said that there are many paths towards balance for the individual and what they're looking for and how they're attaining that balance, right? And how they're working towards it through whatever their ritual is. And so one of the things we see often, I think, with new people who are new to religion, we talked about Wicca earlier.